Hey there, everybody. Robert Taylor with Wonderscape Creations, continuing on with another episode for our world building series. This week we're going deep diving into PCG, and this is what we're going to end up with. As you can see here on the slopes, there's nothing there. I have trees no longer growing up past a certain height. The grass is thinning. Rocks are getting smaller depending on the slopes and other various things. And then we have over here, we can choose which landscape paint layer it's on. And even, as you can see, there's no grass right here, despite the fact that there should be. And that's because we have an extra paint layer where we can just simply remove procedural assets. So this is what we are going to be making this week. And let's go ahead and get to it. All right, now that we're back into the main project, obviously I'm in the default loading level. That's simply because today we need to set up all the structs that we're going to be using and get the data asset made. And it's simply preference with a mixture of a little bit of cautiousness, because when you create a data asset through Blueprint and then you make changes, you sometimes wind up crashing the system. And I just want to avoid that altogether. So we're going to go ahead and get the whole data asset made. And then as we go, we'll start using each of the pieces that can be found within it. So first thing I'm going to do in my folder where everything's going to be, type PCG. And I'm going to try new folder for data. And then one more called structs. Now I say structs because there are 6 structures. That's right, 6 of them. And they're all very important. So the first thing we're going to do, obviously, is create a struct. Now, S for struct, and I'm going to call this one meshes PCG. Or no, not PCG. TLCOA. There we go. I'm going to open it up. Bring it over here. So if you don't know what structures are, they're literally just that. They're structures that hold a set of information that you get to determine. So the first thing we are going to do is get a name. This needs to be the very first thing in my mind. And we will call it ID. Now, ID, the name ID is going to be in every single structure that we have, except for the last one that we're going to do. And you'll understand better when we get into PCG, but it's essentially to make sure that we pull the correct data every single time within the loop that we are generating. The next thing we will do, click Add Variable. This one is going to be of type static mesh. Let's go over here, object reference. I'm going to name this one mesh. Add a variable. This one will be of type float. It's going to be weight. So essentially, how frequently do we want this specific mesh to show up to be spawned? And then a bool. This one is going to be called has collision, because obviously grass doesn't have collision, but trees do. So we want to make sure that we have that option created. So that is our first one. Now, if we come over here into the default values, we're going to keep that as none, keep this empty, put the weight as 1, and keep has collision checked on, because most things will have collision. Save it again one more time. Close that up. Next, another struct. This one will be S underscore slope info. We'll open this one up. And then we will be starting again with a name. Name it ID. And then we are going to need the rest of them will be floats. 1, 2, 4 floats. First one being max slope angle. And then slope strength. Near slope density. Near slope scale. So the default values for this one, obviously we'll keep that as none. We will put the max slope at 0.9, the strength at 1. We'll put this at 0.8 and 0.5. Alrighty. And then another structure. This one will be S underscore height info underscore TLCOA. Open this bad boy up. Now this first one will of course be name ID. Then we are going to have, we'll keep the bool right there. Call it use height info. Now it's important if you like to put question marks with bools. I should have said it with the last bool. When you're using PCG, don't do it. Just don't. PCG uses question marks with something, apparently, so it has a really hard time with variables that have the question mark. So in some instances it works, in some instances it doesn't, so it's easier to just avoid putting a question mark with your bools when it comes to PCG. Okay, sorry, 1 second here. Apparently when I start recording is when I become popular. All right, now then we're going to add a variable of type float, and there are, again, 4 of these. The first one being minimum height. Now, obviously, if you don't want minimum height, you don't have to put minimum height, because, I've got landscapes that go into the abyss. I don't want them spawning things under the fog, so that is why I have that. Maximum height. Fade off height. And fade off. Now we come over here to the defaults here. Obviously keep that as none, keep that empty. And just so that everyone sees that it's working, obviously, I'll put this at 3,000. And then at 8,000, 9,000, and 0.2. All right, so let's save there. And then I keep doing that. Now the structure S underscore transform points underscore S. No, not underscore S. Wow. can't tell, I just woke up. And then, naturally, the very first one. Oops. Is going to be a name called ID. Now then, this one is a little bit involved, and that's okay. First, we're going to have two of them. Type vector. First one is going to be offset min and offset max. The next two will be rotators. This will be rotation min and rotation max. Next one will be a bool called use absolute rotation. Excuse me, rotation. And this is important because trees, we don't want them following the normals of the landscape, but rocks, who cares? Let them. Then the next two are vectors. And they are going to be scale min and scale max. Then the next one is a bool. Use uniform scale. Obviously, a lot of times we will want to use the uniform scale, but it's there for those that don't want it. If you have uniform scale on, then you only need to worry about these two numbers. If it's off, then obviously you need to populate all of them. Now, naturally, we need to make sure we have this set up correctly. With the scales, if you have these at 0, when you start using the transform stuff, nothing's going to show up. It's all going to be invisible because now it thinks the scale is 0. So just to have randomness right off the bat, I'm going to set that up just like this. Obviously, use uniform scale will be check marked for me, but you do what you want. The use absolute rotation I will leave off because I only need it for the trees. Everything else it would be off. For the rotation stuff, you will get a bunch of warnings if you keep it at 0 for some reason. So I just go ahead and do this, negative 180. 180. Now, it may just be a warning that means absolutely nothing and could get fixed in the future. I don't know. But it's easier to just do this right here. And then what the heck? Might as well, right? Negative 50, negative 50. Keep that the same. Actually, we'll go up a bit. We'll go 10 and 20. And you'll see why we're going higher than the Z soon enough. 50 and 50. There we go. We have everything set up there. Now we just have 2 more structures. I know, this is boring. I apologize, but I promise you it's very important. Structures S underscore landscape info underscore TLCOA. Now let's open this one up. This one is quite short. It goes a little bit off of one of my older videos that I've done that shows how to make a tool so that you can choose which landscapes it goes on. But yeah, went a little more simple when it comes to a massive tool like the one that we're building. So the very first thing is, you guessed it, a name. We're going to name it ID. Add variable, and this one will be type boolean, and it will be called remove some PCG. Then as you probably noticed, I named them as a question, and for me that works. The last one will be of type name, and we will name it erase PCG paint layer. We're going to come in here into the defaults. Now, you can keep this as none if you want to, but I already know that it's going to be called remove PCG. So, that's what I'm going to do. Hit save. Now for the great and glorious one. We are going to create the last structure that we need for this series. Over here. And we are going to call this S. Then we will call this mesh info underscore TLCOA. Open it up. The very first thing we're going to put in here is the S underscore, what did I call it? Meshes. So we have S meshes TLCOA. Now we're going to come over here to this fancy little number here. We're going to make this one an array. Now the next variable, so that we don't have to keep doing it, we're going to change it from an array. We are going to name this one a bool, and it will be called density. Then we're going to add another one. We're going to call this one looseness. This will make sense in a little bit. There's a very good reason for it. And then finally, extents. Again, we'll be going over that soon. And after that, something I should have done first, you guys probably already noticed it, name, ID. So we're going to go ahead and drag this one above this one that I forgot to name. I'm going to name it meshes. Here we go. Next thing I'm going to do is do an integer. I'm going to name it seed. All right. Now we will do the transform. What did I name in this one? Points. Transform info. Add variable. This one will be the slope info. Sorry, I'm changing the order up a little bit. Height info. Then landscape info. So make sure you have these all named correctly to whatever you want. Now it's also important to make sure that we when we are in PCG that everything is named correctly. Uppercases, spaces, that's why I removed the spaces. I don't want to deal with it. And since I've been doing a lot of C++, they don't do spaces. I'm trying to just keep things as they are. Now then, that is the second to last thing. One more thing we need. This one will be of type linear color. And we're going to call this one debug color. Because, you may have a crap ton of these placed in the world, so we do kind of need those, the color set up. So I'll keep the color black. Obviously, if we open up the slope info, it's all already generated for us. Fantastic, la-di-da. But for things like the density and all that, we will go ahead and set that up now. Density we'll put at 0.1. Looseness we will keep at 1. The extents we'll put at 100. And then the seed we will keep at 0 for the moment. We hit save. Actually, let's put it at 500. Then hit save. And the reason for that is now we can, do this. I just clicked on the box, held down the button, and went left and right. All right. So the last thing we are going to do in this episode is create the data asset. So we're going to come here, right click, new folder, data asset, right click. It's a blueprint. Go to all classes, data asset. We need a primary data asset. That's the blueprint kind. And I'm going to name it BP underscore PCG data asset TLCOA. Okay. Then we're going to open it up. Once it decides to. Alrighty. So now we're going to come in here. We're going to hit a plus sign. And the first thing is going to be the mesh info. And I'm going to right click on it, and right clicking on it automatically makes it an array. Obviously, you could click on that. You could click over here to change it to an array if you needed to. Then we need to open the eyeball. This is going to be named list of meshes. Next will be of type name, landscape layers. So this is going to determine where our tool paints it. That way, if we paint dirt somewhere in the middle of it, it'll remove everything from the dirt. It's just the idea, assuming that the layer that everything's painted on is grass. So we needed that. Hit the plus sign, make this a bool, not a bool, a float. Also needs to be visible. It needs to be single now. And it is named layer transition. Then we have another one that we should have done first called use landscape data, question mark. Make this one a bool. Oops. And then we're going to add another one. Name it biome fall off distance. That's right. I did the cardinal sin no. I'm going to remove that question mark now. Open the eyeball. Open this up. Biome fall off was supposed to be next, not the distance. That's fine. then biome fall off density. Awesome. So now we are going to name our categories. Spawnable arrays. Now, to quickly go over this, I have spawnable arrays because I may decide to do it for things like, you know, animals that are in the forest and whatnot. And for that, we would need something slightly different. Instead of meshes, it would need to be actors, obviously. And then we would also need to remove make sure that some of the logic does not play for that instance. And because I'm not going into that, I'm not going that deep into it. We're only going to intermediate, not advanced. I am only going to place one for the time being. Now, the next thing that we want to do, click on this bad boy, the bool, and then this one I'm going to name general. And then the rest of them I will, of course, you're going to do that. I was afraid of that. So let's put you back in default for the time being. You know what? You too. So we want this one to be first. General. And then we go with distance. Fall off. Then we'll go with layer transition. Name. Then the bool. Why? There we go. Perfect. So now compile and save. Now there's one last thing we have to do because we've made the blueprint, but now we need to make the data asset. So if we go to data asset, you'll see it's in miscellaneous if you don't want to type. And then we're going to come in here and we need to find PCG data asset TLCOA. Select. And this one is going to be DA for data asset. And I'm going to name this one forest _ TLCOA because I know that this one is going to be a forest. That's where I'm going to be showing it off. And here we are. So obviously if we hit the plus sign, we now have all this information. So if I were to put large trees, then I would need to copy this and make sure everywhere that there is an ID, we place those in there. There we go. And then obviously for any tree that we, oh, not that one, we'll do that later. And then obviously for any mesh that we make, we would also need to make sure we put the ID. So that's everything that we are going over for this specific video. In the next one, obviously, we will start playing with PCG and starting to get our world to look pretty nice. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.